What golfing is about hip hinging. What we suddenly see is, people are paying billions of dollars to have your golf set up, but the second they go into a setup, they introduced basically little weird spinal loads into their spine. They've twisted their spine, and then their body tries to straighten it out, and then we add high velocity, and well, of course you swing out of plane. I mean, your stick is bent, right? If you want to swing in plane, make sure your spine is actually like a rod. So I think, it's easy to say that. What we want people to be able to do is to see it when the things that matter most, not some physical therapy quick test. That's for me. Yeah. I need you to be able to squat down to a chair and be able to identify, did you lose your lumbar positioning, yes or no? And you don't need coach's eye. You don't need an expensive app. You've got all the software here, and you need to be able to see to your kid, hey, I need you to slow down, or we have to teach this, or we've developed a problem. Using the language that makes us human, which is, can I bend over and pick up my kid out of the crib, keeping my back straight? And if I can't, that's the mechanism of your back pain. Stop right there. Learn to do that first, will prevent you injury, and then we can resolve your tissue dysfunction. And I think, we've unfortunately, and especially in the world of physio, in my side, we've really spent a lot of time mobilizing and manipulating and doing all those things, and we never have really addressed the issue. I address the quick test, step up, step down the stair is also part of the problem, And so, the bend over and touch your toes is a quick test. Yeah, it shouldn't hurt, but can you do that with a technique that supports your spine and scales at no weight and scales to 200 kilos? And what we're seeing is people don't have that language, and when we give them that language, spontaneously their back pain gets better. And when we also teach them that, hey, there are these things called tissues, and they're stiff, and what are you doing? I mean, people are basically just driving their car with the handbrake on. And what we've tried to do, and if you've ever been to our website, we advocate for 10 or 15 minutes a day of working on your position mechanics. That may be joint capsule, that may be some of your sliding surfaces, or sort of the trigger point like muscle restrictions, right? The muscle dynamics, how stiff the muscles are. And you can't treat your whole body the whole day. So you solve one problem or one area a day, and we'll get the rest of it tomorrow. And what we see is that people are aggregating 90 to 120 minutes of this a week, and that's a phenomenal amount. And we're finding problems that haven't come up to the surface yet. Let's, for example, the forearms rarely bark. I mean, the forearms of people. I ask them, how about this? Let's use a real example. Everyone likes to have those sexy six-pack abs, right? That's the thing, right? And I ask people, well, how many times have your abs been sore in your life? Athletes are like, I don't know, 1 million times. Where you're afraid to sneeze, because your abs are so sore. I'm like, what'd you do for them afterwards? You're like, I don't know. They just stopped being sore one day. Well, I'm like, when the last time your quads were sore from a big run or a heavy squats, what'd you do? Well, I got a massage. I got an ART practice. I rolled them out. And I'm like, well, why didn't you do the same thing for your stomach? Your stomach is the same system. And so if your obliques are tight, if your QL is tight, if your psoas is stiff, and you're all tacked down, let's say you had a baby or abdominal surgery, you're just like, you've got staples running through layers of wet clay. And no wonder you're experiencing so much of this problem. And there was a good study that came out recently in the last 6 months where they basically injected the thoracodorsal fascia, that big sheet of connective tissue in the back to which all your spinous processes stick out of your back and how the muscles too. They injected it in wait for this, the fascia was a non-specific generator of low back pain. Like, no, are you serious? Of course. It's tissue attached directly to your back, and it's highly innervated. So you know what's really easy? Roll on your back on a cricket ball, for 10 minutes a night, and just make sure that those tissues aren't stiff. One of the problems is we've really divorced, for people, I think, the experience of what is normal tissue and what's not normal tissue. You, as a human, have the right to know, are my quads stiff, yes or no? And what we teach at our seminars even is a technique we call smashing, where you just take your foot and put it on your mate or loved one's leg and move it back and forth. And what you're going to see is that tissues that are normal are painful to compression. Or aren't painful to compression. So if you lay on a lacrosse ball or a baseball or a cricket ball, you should be able to put that ball anywhere in your body and it shouldn't hurt at all. And if it hurts, then you've got a tissue restriction. And that's the first, that you don't need to go anywhere else. That's a problem. And what I can unequivocally say is, if you've got pain in your knee and you go up upstream of the knee and you put that ball in your quad and it hurts, that's part of the mechanism of your knee pain. I can't say it's the only thing, but it's a system. So let's get people to start initiating that conversation that tissues shouldn't be painful to compression and normal tissues aren't stiff. It doesn't feel like biltong or beef jerky. And, and can you stretch beef jerky? No way. You've got to chew it up and get all gristly. So if we give people that basics, and remember, that's just myofascial. That's just the superficial stuff. What we're also finding is that athletes are having a hard time downregulating. They can't turn off. They play in a game, they go to bed, and they lay in bed for 2 hours. You should fall asleep like someone hits you over the head. And what we're finding is that we're drinking lots of caffeine and all of these accelerator, amp, surge, pre-workout load. Plus, I work 16 jobs, and I'm training like I'm an Olympic athlete, even though I'm just studying for a little 5K. And what happens is that people are cooked, can't fall asleep. Well, we can measure that. It's called heart rate variability, right? We can put you up to the omega wave, but you still have to deal with it. And what we're finding is that some of that soft tissue work before you go to bed is a really powerful way to access that parasympathetic part of your nervous system. And so we can really start to tie these behaviors into best practice that make people feel better. They sleep better, their tissue stop being stiff, and it ends up being sort of a self-fulfilling positive reinforcement mechanism. But to your point, I feel like, what are we talking about? Like you're just paid me $300 to tell you that your quads were stiff, and then you didn't have hip extension. Like, that's medical malpractice. I mean, you should come in because you cannot solve it, right? Or your treatment has been ineffective. So that's what we're trying to get to.
And for the listeners, if you haven't been to Mobility World or you haven't tapped in Kelly Starrett to YouTube, what he's basically got is 3 to 6 minute videos. Some go on a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. But exactly as he said there, he might look at the ankle, he might look at the hip, and he'll give you some great mobility, be it stretching, be it foam rolling or on a lacrosse ball. And it will give you some understanding of not only what he's talking about here, but what he's also looking for you to start practicing. And also for the people that have been to my lectures and sat in the classroom with me, where I do get very energetic about the nervous system and how important it is when it comes to exercise. And exactly as Kelly was saying there, shutting off, we need to be accessing the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, and the importance of that, because another thing that I've always mentioned is we can have people who are just regular people. They'll get up in the morning, they've got to get the kids up for school, they've got to get them fed, they've got to get them ready, they then take them to school. They work an 8-hour day, they go and pick the children up, they come back, and then they may try and squeeze an hour's worth of exercise in. Now, I know from personal experience, I have a client, she's a solicitor, she may come in and she just looks drained. So my first thinking is, I'm not going to run her into the wall. I'm not going to run her into the ground. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take her down into the mats, I'm going to roll her out, I'm going to stretch her, and these types of things. So it's just being a little bit more, I don't want to say intelligent, because I don't think it really needs much intelligence for it, but it's just broadening the horizons of the practice, rather than just bringing them and, running them into the ground if that's what we do, but adding so much more around it. And I think that's a very important part to being a trainer, or working with the general public, and even working with athletes as well.
I completely agree with you. And, you have to have a practice every day. And some days, like, we have never seen someone who even when someone's nervous system is cooked, I have one of my professional chefs was just in here, and he's just opened a new restaurant up in Napa. And he's just like, hey, he came in with his girlfriend, she's training with us. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do some deadlifting here. Why don't you just put 60 kilos on the bar, and you're just going to do a 60 kilo deadlift once or twice every minute for the next 10 minutes. And that's not going to tax his nervous system. But we do have him moving, and we do put his system under load. We do reclaim function. And then, there's always a way of getting some work done. The key is that you mentioned it, is that when the frying pan is hot, we cook. Yeah. And when the frying pan's not hot, we don't need to cook, but you need to have a practice. Yeah. And I've never seen some sled drags put someone into the hospital. I've never seen, 5 sets of 15 kettlebells kill anyone.